Hi everyone, Dr. Byrne here from Revive TV. This month we are talking all things gut health, and today we're going to dive into a controversial product, and that is wheat. Okay, so today's episode is why is wheat bad for you? I spent considerable time debating whether I should call it by that title, and I'm going to hopefully through today's episode explain to you and give you reason to perhaps agree or at least to consider your consumption of wheat and wheat-like products. The question I always ask myself around any question with health, and so let's use food as an example, is the food that I'm eating a requirement for optimal health? Or is it something that my body can tolerate and so therefore I can consume in some amounts? And I think wheat will fall into this category. Is wheat a requirement for optimal health? I hope today's episode is going to show you that that's not the case. So Dr. William Davis is a leading cardiologist in the States. He now practices what he would call preventative cardiology, and he wrote a book called Wheat Belly. And so Dr. Davis, through his years in practice, found that over 80% of all the people who visited him were either pre-diabetic or diabetic. Now, anyone who is in that situation, that can double, even triple the risk of heart disease. So it's probably very significant, and especially for a cardiologist, hugely significant. So he started by asking all his patients, gluten, even the ones who weren't gluten sensitive, and we all know about gluten now, to avoid wheat wholly for 3 months. And he measured pre and post blood sugar levels. And it was without doubt that everyone across the board who had taken wheat out of their diet, that their blood sugar levels had diminished to a point where some of them were no longer considered either pre-diabetic or diabetic at all. So, as the cardiologist, you can imagine, he says, well, this is pretty good. But it was actually interesting that there were all these reported health benefits that came associated with not just resulting around heart disease. One of the large ones was weight gain. Some people were reporting up to 10 to 15 kilos of weight loss around weight loss. So not only did they feel better, they looked better and felt better about themselves. There was reported a decrease in joint pain, in finger and hand pain. There was a decrease in moodiness, an increase in sleep quality, waking up feeling refreshed, a decrease in gut issues, gassiness, bloatiness, but even more serious things like irritable bowel syndrome. People were reporting the decrease in these type of symptoms. So Dr. Davis, while trying to care for his cardiology patients, also found these other great health benefits as well, and has therefore concluded that wheat is probably not a great substance for us. So Dr. Davis has also come to the conclusion that wheat consumption is the cause of heart disease and not an increase in cholesterol-based foods or saturated fats. We don't have time to go into that topic today, and all I'm asking for you is this is not my opinion, this is coming from a leading cardiologist who deals with this every day. So the reason he says that is the consumption of wheat triggers the formation of small LDL particles. LDL is cholesterol, and we sometimes referred to as bad cholesterol. These small particles are increased by the consumption of wheat, and it's these small particles that are probably the leading cause of heart disease in the Western world. One of the things that has evolved over time is the change in the type of wheat products we're eating. We are moving away from white processed flour. I think a lot of us are aware of this now, to more of a whole grain. So is a whole grain wheat, or is whole grain wheat better for you than white processed version of it? And the answer is yes. But there is a little bit of a flaw in saying that this is healthy for us. Just because something is less bad for us than something else, does that make it better, or should we be consuming it because of that factor? Let's consider cigarettes for a moment. Smoking a cigarette that is unfiltered has more damaging effects. It's been shown to have more damaging effects than one that is filtered. Would we say, though, therefore, that we should smoke unfiltered cigarettes, should smoke filtered cigarettes because it has a greater health benefit? The answer is clearly no, and that might be quite a contrast, or an easy one to kind of go, well, of course cigarette smoking is bad for us, but it's similar flaw. We've kind of come into this thing, well, whole grains is better than the processed stuff, so let's consume it, and that's not really necessarily a great health choice in itself. So to compound this further, wheat also has a protein in it called gliadin, and gliadin is an appetite stimulant. So the more you consume of it, the more you want of it, or the more food you want to eat. So, and obviously the more food you eat, especially the more wheat you eat, the more weight you're going to gain. And in his book, Dr. Davis, called Wheat Belly, it's called Wheat Belly for this reason, because when we do store the fat, it's stored more around the viscera, so that's the organs in our stomach, around our stomach. So, and when we have this increase in visceral fat, this increases inflammation, and inflammatory signals are sent out to the body, which then increases our blood sugar levels, it increases our blood pressure, it increases our triglycerides, and all of these things lead to a greater chance of heart disease. So you can see why Dr. Davis is pretty keen on us reducing our wheat intake. So who's to blame for this huge consumption of wheat? Well, wheat is an easy product. It allows us to preserve things. It allows us to be a filler. But big business, big food, they've kind of sold us a furphy that wheat is essential for us. Wheat is not just in things that are obvious, like cereals and breads and baking products, but there are also things hidden in things like soups, and even in lollies like licorice and other things. So, and if they're in those things, and we know it's an appetite stimulant, then we're going to want more and more of those foods. So for us, we've already discussed the effects of the potential health effects, and perhaps there's more that there's a shorter list of things that it doesn't affect than it is of things that it does. So obviously heart disease is a huge one. That was the one that Dr. Davis kind of found. We've already talked about weight loss. We talked about joint inflammation. We've talked about digestive situations being better. The one for me that really stands out is stuff that related around the brain and the nervous system. So as a chiropractor who deals with brain and nervous system function on a daily basis, this is huge for me. So what was found is that moods can be affected, even to the state where people feeling depressed by the amount of wheat they've got in their system. Behavioural changes in children, especially those with things like ADHD and autism, they're more susceptible to it. And so those kind of things are significant in not only that child's life, but also in the people in the family around them. And then even more significantly recently, the Mayo Clinic in America, it's a huge clinic, you can Google them, they're everywhere. They've recently detailed a disease called gluten encephalopathy. Encephalopathy is a big word, I don't want to say it again, but it's a disease that affects the structure of the brain. And so they've found that the structure of the brain alteration has been caused by gluten, which is found in wheat. Now, the unfortunate part is this disease is often only able to be diagnosed at autopsy, so after death. So lots of different health challenges are affected by wheat consumption. Whether you think wheat is bad for you is up to you. The question I do want you to ask yourself, though, is wheat a requirement for optimal eating and therefore optimal health for you as a human? I think there's enough evidence to show that we can get that we don't need wheat, that there are probably better sources of foods that are going to help our systems be the best that they can be. So next week, we're going to talk about 5 alternatives that you can use to help you replace wheat, because sometimes it's hard to replace. So join us then for another episode, and remember, our Inspired Eating Workshop on the 29th of April, it's a Tuesday, at the practice. You can register by clicking on the links, which I think are above, and I will see you for another episode of Revive TV.